Hello everyone, it's Ty. With the release of Genshin 6. Luna 1, I noticed a rather Ouroborosian pattern with many of the quality of life improvements I've seen them implement since I began playing the game. Far too often, the quality of life improvement itself needs quality of life improvements. So today, I thought we'd take a look at 5 Genshin Impact QoLs that need QoLs. One of the most hated features of Genshin is that leveling materials are on a limited rotation schedule. Each talent book or weapon ascension doobob is only available to farm on 3 particular days a week: Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, or Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday, the day all materials share. So it would come as no surprise that one of the most requested changes is for all materials to be available at all times. After all, Star Rail and Zenless released with all of their materials available at all times. Why should Genshin be any different? Some headway was made in that regard in patch 5.3 when the Overflowing Mastery event, the occasional event giving double drops for farming talent materials, was replaced with the Overflowing Abundance event. Now, not only do both talent books and weapon ascension materials receive double drops, but for the entire week of the event, all materials are available every day. Of course, that's only 1 week during an event that shows up somewhat sporadically every couple of patches. But now that we know Genshin can do it, there's no reason for them not to just do it all the time, right? Enter version Luna 1. Ugh. With it came the arrival of a new feature. All materials would be available every day, just like everyone wanted. But it's only for 1 week after a banner starts. Sure, that's at the start of every banner, so twice a patch at least, and ostensibly for a 3rd week on patches when Overflowing Abundance returns, but that's still only a partial fix. It's certainly a step in the right direction, but it's still not quite what people asked for, so they will likely continue to ask for it until this QoL gets itself another QoL. Something of a surprise in version Luna 1 was the possible revelation that artifact substats aren't in fact randomly generated when leveling and are ostensibly generated in full when the artifact drops. A revelation made apparent when they announced the new feature which automatically shows the 4th substat of an artifact before it's leveled up. Being able to see what a piece of gear's full stats are without leveling it is a great help to those whose inventory is filled to bursting with artifacts that might be good. Now you immediately know whether it is or not and can just trash it. But unfortunately, this feature only affects 5-star artifacts. Even 4-star artifacts with 3 stats don't have this useful feature. There's really no logical reason for it to only apply to 5-star artifacts, unless 5-star artifacts are a completely different entity than 4 or fewer star artifacts. What possible purpose does that serve? Why wouldn't you just do that for all artifacts? It raises so many questions, but the basic fact is that they need to, at the very least, add this functionality for 4-star artifacts. 1, 2, and 3-star artifacts are unquestionably just fodder, and many might argue that 4-star are as well, but there are many really good 4-star sets that don't have 5-star versions. Someone is just as likely to want to know what the substats are for a 4-star artifact as a 5-star. Seems to me like just another QoL that needs a QoL. For the longest time, the only way to deal with junk artifacts in your inventory was to either use them as leveling materials for other artifacts, or use junk 5-star artifacts in the Mystic offerings to generate new junk 5-star artifacts. Fortunately, patch 5.0 added the ability to salvage artifacts directly into Sanctifying Unction and Sanctifying Essence, freeing up your inventory space. Unfortunately, like everything else on this list, the process is just not quite as good as it should be. At present, it's an absolute UX nightmare. You can only sort by rank ascending or descending, a function basically rendered useless by the quick select option, which allows you to immediately select all 1, 2, 3, and or 4-star artifacts. Granted, this ability was itself a QoL of the QoL, not added until patch 5.5. Yet, somehow, while recognizing that the function needed more work, they still didn't address the most egregious of issues. There is absolutely no useful filtering. You can't filter by slot, there's no filter by main stat, and certainly no filters for substats, so you're effectively left to click through every single piece of gear to see what its stats are, and then either leave it selected or awkwardly click it again to unselect it. Sure would be nice to be able to quick select artifacts marked as trash, hey? At best, you can filter by set and by locked marked status, but the mark is, like artifact salvaging, another QoL that needs a QoL. Another of the things I recall people asking the devs for was a way to mark artifacts for various purposes. Whether to mark them as trash or to mark them as a favorite for frequent use, the addition of another way to differentiate artifacts from one another, other than locking them, would be immensely useful. One can only imagine the disappointment then when, in patch 5.2, they released the artifact marking system and it was, well, what it is. For some reason, they decided to link the mark functionality with the lock functionality. Marking an artifact automatically locks it. Unlocking an artifact removes the mark. What the hell is even the point of this? The problem is it creates 3 artifact states: unlocked, locked, and locked and marked. Locked artifacts cannot be salvaged or used to level up other artifacts. As such, a locked artifact is already denoted to be an artifact worth keeping and in need of the protections from accidental salvage that locking provides. By adding the mark in the way that they have done, it only creates a state higher in tier than locked, which makes the locked state the de facto middle, neutral state. This implies that anything that's not locked must be trash. A false premise when every artifact you receive, whether good or bad, is, by default, unlocked. I'm sure it could be argued the majority of artifacts are trash, but that's not the point here. You can, of course, reject that view, continue to see unlocked as the neutral state that it should be, and locked as the state above it. But that only shows how completely superfluous the mark actually is, since it only denotes how you extra special want to keep that locked artifact that you already know you want to keep, which is why you locked it in the first place. It's also clear that the Genshin team hasn't really thought it through themselves, as there are a number of filters which can filter on both unlocked and marked status, mutually exclusive states that legitimately cannot return values. But hey, maybe it's a sign of some QoL to come, because this QoL definitely needs some QoL. One of the most often and most loudly requested QoLs is some form of customizable gear loadouts for quick swapping gear sets. It is also the biggest rollercoaster of a QoL that I can think of in my time playing this game. Leading into version 4.4, a feature was announced to include custom loadouts, and everyone lost their minds, excited to finally get what they thought was what they had been asking for. Alas, when it arrived, the system was merely a rigid way to quickly equip characters using the gear in your inventory based on automatically generated recommendations from active player data. Certainly useful for those who aren't into all the hassle of figuring out what gear to use, but not even remotely what people were hoping to see. The custom nature of the feature was that you could either use the automatically generated recommendations or create a custom set of stats to prioritize for gearing. Either way, it still automatically determined which of your artifacts it was going to use. While it was possible to check alternatives for each recommended piece of gear and equip the gear pieces that you specifically chose, that final loadout of gear itself was not saved. So you'd consistently have to manually swap the pieces of gear each time. Not at all the custom gear loadouts that people were asking for. Definitely in need of a QoL. Fast forward to 5.7 when they announced the ability to save and switch custom loadouts. Everyone was once again abuzz with the hope that finally they'd get their gear loadout system that they'd been waiting for. Excitement skyrocketed. Surely after feedback, changes would be made and everyone would be happy, right? Well, the excitement rocket crashed once again when it turned out it was little more than an update to the original Fast Equip system to add a second customizable configuration slot for the same automatically determined artifact system. Now you can customize 2 different sets of stats, which automatically select gear and which you cannot change in the most basic of ways that people want. You can still check alternatives, but those alternative options still aren't saved to the loadout. Again, it's definitely useful to some, and through significantly inconvenient methods, it's possible to be used in the way that people want, but still, it is absolutely not the very simple custom gear loadout system that people have been asking for ages. It's as if Genshin is always teetering right on the cusp of the solution. Players ask for a very simple thing, but only get a near approximation of it, or a version of it with severe conditions, restrictions, or flaws. One might argue it's an intentional tactic, to always fall just shy of the mark so that when an update is made that does make things better, it seems like they've responded positively to player requests, when in fact, they're just constantly fixing the problems they created by not doing it right in the first place. But who knows? I guess we'll just keep unpacking the matryoshka of QoLs. Maybe another QoL to the QoL of the QoL will get it right at some point in the future. In any case, thanks so much for watching. If you like this sort of thing, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell to be notified when I post more things of this or any other nature. Let me know down in the comments what you think about these QoLs that constantly need QoLs. Or if there are any other QoLs that I didn't mention that you think need more QoLs, let me know. Anywho, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you all again next time. Bye!